It was around this time 8 years ago that the Republican primary field was starting to take shape. By this point in 2015, 6 people were already in.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz became the first politician from either party to announce plans to run for president in 2016.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio is officially in the Republican race.
I'm Ben Carson, and I'm a candidate for president of the United States.
I'm Carly Fiorina, and I'm running for president.
I am a candidate for president of the United States.
I am putting myself forward as a candidate for president of the United States.
Over the coming weeks and months,
I'm Jeb Bush.
Good evening, I'm Scott Walker.
I'm Donald Trump. Hi, my name is Chris Christie.
I'm John Kasich.
Governor Bobby Jindal.
Senator Rick Santorum.
Governor Jim Gilmore.
Republican candidate Rick Perry.
Governor George Pataki.
I'm Lindsey Graham, and I'm running for president of the United States.
11 more candidates would join the race. The famous image summing it all up.
The 11 leading Republican candidates for president are at their podiums. They are ready to face off. And if you've been watching this race, you know anything could happen over the next few hours.
Was the crowded debate stage.
Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
One at a time.
It doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
And the candidates fighting to be heard. It was this pileup.
For the candidates who have not yet won a state, I ask you to prayerfully consider our coming together.
And the refusal by candidates to drop out.
That is the only way to beat Donald Trump.
That's often seen as a leading cause of Donald Trump's nomination.
It's official now. It's official now. Donald Trump is the Republican presidential nominee.
And it's a specter that hangs over this moment. Because once again, a majority of Republicans are not solidly behind Trump, and a clear alternative has yet to emerge. Meaning that, once again, the anti-Trump vote could fracture, leaving Trump with the nomination. So in this crucial window, I wanted to talk to 2 potential candidates who were faced with the choice. Should I run or should I get out of the way? And who reached 2 different conclusions. From the New York Times, I'm Astead Herndon. This is The Run-Up.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you, Governor? Thank you for taking some time out to talk with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity.
Larry Hogan is the former governor of Maryland and one of the last moderates standing in national Republican politics. In that role, he's been an open critic of Donald Trump. He makes no secret of the fact that he never voted for Trump. Not in 2016, when he wrote in his dad, and not in 2020, when he wrote in Ronald Reagan. Still, Hogan was massively popular in Maryland, with Republicans, Democrats, and independents. That popularity increasingly led to speculation that he would try and run for president in 2024, and that he was the exact type of Republican the party was looking for. But after months of whispers, Hogan announced in early March that he would not be running. And he called back to that crowded 2016 field.
You know, in the early primaries, Trump was winning with 25% or 30% of the vote. He wasn't winning a majority anywhere. But we had 17 candidates, and he was the one that kind of stood out. It really wasn't all Republicans that were feeling that way, but the ones that showed up, more of them showed up for Donald Trump than anybody else, and it was, I think it surprised almost everyone.
Mm-hmm. Looking back to that time, do you feel like the fractured anti-Trump coalition, more than anything, led the Republican Party to where it is now? Was it the pileup that was the problem?
I think the pileup was a problem. There wasn't an organized anti-Trump faction. It was simply the real Republican Party. And obviously, had they consolidated around one really strong candidate, and I'm not sure who that candidate could have been, we could have had a different result. But none of that happened. It's what I didn't want to see happen this time. We didn't want a repeat of that. There were some really good candidates in that race, but there were 17 of them. And so everybody was down in single digits for the most part. A couple of them hung in there for a while, like John Kasich and Ted Cruz lasted for a while, but a lot of the rest fell by the wayside, and they didn't consolidate early enough.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, it does seem like this is informing how you were thinking about 2024. Why, despite that, did you explore running yourself?
Well, I just believe very strongly that the Republican Party's heading in the wrong direction, that we're off track, and that we've had really a terrible 6 years. It's the worst time for the Republican Party in history. We lost the White House, we lost the Senate, we lost the House, we lost governor's seats and state legislative bodies, and then we barely won the House back in a year that should have been a tidal wave because we continue to relitigate the 2020 election, talk about conspiracy theories, and we nominated some candidates in that primary who just had no electability in the general election. The Republicans that won were Republicans like me that were common sense conservatives, traditional Republicans that were able to win swing voters, that focused on the economy. They talked about keeping people safe in their communities. They talked about education. But all the ones that Trump endorsed, most of them lost and shouldn't have. We should have elected stronger candidates.
But you would think that after the midterm elections, when there was such a clear electoral cost to Trumpism, that if there was ever a window for it to be open to make that argument, it was in that window.
No question.
So why haven't we gotten that in this window?
Well, you know what? I asked myself the exact same question a lot. I thought I was a pretty good student of history and I thought I knew politics pretty well. But, I predicted that eventually his support would diminish, and it did for a while. And after January 6th, it dropped considerably and it continued to drop. I thought it was going to continue to go down, and I didn't expect the rebound that he's got now.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like your thinking behind running was that the midterm showed that a lot of voters wanted someone like you. But as you said before, the Republican primary is a lot different than that general election. Is the reason you're not running because you didn't see the path through the primary?
Well, that certainly was a big part of the decision. Look, I thought I had a proven track record. I got the same support among Republicans that Trump did, but I added to that winning coalition by overwhelmingly winning independents, by having huge numbers with Black voters and Hispanics and winning Asians and winning suburban women. So I thought I was likely, based on the track record, the best possible candidate for a general election. And I thought I could do pretty well. But the primary is a totally different calculation. And as you're looking at the polls and seeing Trump 50-some%, it's a different subset of people that actually turn out for those primaries. And they're focused on different issues than people care about in the general. They're looking for something different. And so my point is we need to nominate electable people, but a lot of people don't, they're more concerned about who's going to go to the farthest to the right or who's going to push all the whatever the hot button issues are going to fire up those folks that are out there.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you are identifying the primaries as a huge problem for the Republican Party that pushes it away to being reflective of what most Americans want. Is there a way to come out of the Republican presidential primary as a quote unquote moderate?
Well, it's starting to change. And by the way, it's not just a Republican problem. I mean, it's the Democrats have a mirror image of that, in that sometimes the most progressive or the most far left folks win their primary.
Certainly,
and,
but I mean,
have a hard time getting elected in a general.
I just want to push back because we did have Joe Biden just come out of a primary that had a lot of progressive activism and not go that direction. I'm saying, can that exist in the Republican Party?
I think it can, but I was trying to avoid the multi-car pileup. And again, you had to have one strong person like that. Look, prior to Trump, all of the more moderate candidates won every nomination. John McCain was in that lane. Mitt Romney was in that lane. Bush was in that lane. But Trump has kind of broke the mold, and things are a little out of whack right now. But I think it is possible. I can't tell you who that might be at this point, but I didn't want to be one of the ones fighting for the scraps and having a lot of people trying to say the same thing I've been saying for years.
One of the things I've heard from Trump supporters, though, is that some of them take real pride in the ways they've shifted the party from the Romneys, from the Bushes, to this version of the Republican Party, which they argue is more central on working class people and has rejected those type of business interests. What do you say to the legitimate kind of ideological concerns people and a lot of Trump supporters have, feeling good about the ways they've shifted the party?
Well, first of all, I think there's multiple different types of folks that voted for Donald Trump. I like some of Trump's policies. And most Republicans supported, tax cuts, and they like getting tough on China and things like that. But they don't like, some of the other stuff that he's been all about. So it's a subset. But however, I think it's a fight for the heart and soul of the party. And right now, I don't think the fight's over, but right now I think those guys have sort of hijacked the Republican Party. It was kind of a hostile takeover, and they're still the ones that are calling the shots, but they're also losing all the elections.
I see the effort that you're identifying to avoid the multi-car pileup of 2016, but it does feel like some of that has already been avoided in this race. You have not seen people like the Glenn Youngkins of the world or Mike Pompeos of the world get in the race. You yourself have decided not to get in the race. Is there a risk of an opposite problem now, where Donald Trump is taking up so much space in the Republican primary that the lack of other voices makes him more inevitable?
Well, I think we've got at least 6 or 8 or 9 people that are going to run. They haven't all announced yet, but I think by the end of next month, I think we'll know everybody that's in the race. And I don't think you can wait too much longer than that if you hope to have any success. They got first debate coming up in August, and you really have to. It takes a while to build that team and to raise the hard dollars necessary and to get the visibility. So I think the race is going to have it's not going to be as crowded as it was in 2016, but it's not like there's no candidates. Right now, we're going to have a pretty good selection of folks that are going to be out there making the argument. Unfortunately, right now, they're not getting any traction or any attention. And you have like all of them in single digits. You have DeSantis, dropping like a rock, and you got Trump going up.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it seems like a different type of problem than 16, not necessarily the multi-car pileup, but the fact that Republicans are just rallying around the former president. How do you deal with that problem?
Well, I mean, only 30% of them were rallying around the president, and then the indictment came in New York, and he got back up to 50%.
Mm-hmm. You're saying thank Alvin Bragg for that?
Well, I mean, it definitely had the opposite impact than what I think people thought.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess what I am asking is partially if you could build out a platform of a Republican candidate that you think could build a coalition across a moderate wing or other voters who don't want Trump, what does that candidate look like?
Well, it looks like me. I think it's got to be a thoughtful candidate. I think it's a more traditional Republican, not only bigger tent and working class folks and middle class folks, and not talking about crazy things. That's how you can appeal to folks. You got to talk about the things they care about.
Mm-hmm. But aren't you not running in part because you didn't see a path for someone like you in the primary? So how do you reconcile the fact that you see the best general election path through the type of coalitions you have helped create, and also the fact that that doesn't seem to have a lane in this version of the party?
Well, there's definitely a lane, but there's not room for 6 people in the same lane. Mm-hmm. And it's not currently what you would think would be the lane it's not the fast lane. I have many friends that are in the race or thinking about getting in the race, all have really good strengths. And I'm hoping that I can find, somebody that emerges that I can get behind and help. But you're right, today, it doesn't appear as if there's a path. And that's my whole point, is that the most likely path to the nomination is different than what you need to win a general election and build a big coalition. We're totally different types of folks.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the problem for a lot of Republicans who want to move on from Trump. It's like, well, where are we going to go?
Yeah. Is that a candidate problem? Is that a lane problem? Why isn't it clear for you where that energy should go?
I think there are many people that I think would be good candidates and would be good presidents. However, they're not getting any traction. I've been a little, disappointed with a couple of people that just didn't, when they announced that they didn't get a lot of attention or traction. Somebody's got to, capture at least a little bit of attention. Like, hey, wow, I like, even though Trump's, he's still way ahead. I really like what this guy's doing and saying. And I don't know if there's a moment when you go, this is the guy, but somebody's got to start to excite the party in a different direction and make the arguments that people actually listen to. Right now, guys like you and me and everybody in social media and on cable, they're all talking about Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
None of the other guys are getting any
Well,
attention.
let me talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Ron DeSantis then, huh? Yeah. Like, how do... big pivot. How do you then think about someone like that who has made an ability to get name recognition, to break out of the pack at least a little bit, but has not done so, I would say, as rejecting Trumpism? He's actually done so by leaning into it.
Yeah. Look, I think to date, he's gotten more attention and done more than any of the other candidates, and it's a totally different strategy. I mean, some candidates are trying to balance. We don't want to alienate the Trump folks, but we want to move on. Some people are just non-Trump guys. Mm-hmm. DeSantis is trying to out-Trump Trump. He's trying to move to the right of Trump, and his strategy is to go after the hardcore Trump base. When he first got elected governor of Florida, he was fairly moderate, and he was doing some things on the environment, and he was not focused on social issues, and he wasn't the current guy we see right now. But I think he's intentionally decided that he wants to be the, kind of a younger, smarter version of Trump, and he's going after that base. I think it's a hard sell to take Trump voters away from Trump, and we just saw them. They took a look at DeSantis, and then many of them ran back to Trump. Yeah, so I think he's certainly raised a lot of money. He's got a lot of people paying attention. He's made pretty much wall-to-wall coverage on Fox News, so he's somebody to reckon with. But I would just argue that everybody, a year out, when everybody says this is going to be the next guy, it's never that guy.
It does seem as if some of DeSantis's recent struggles does complicate the premise of the race of people like you. I mean, there was coordination around DeSantis. There was a positioning of him with donors and activists that could seem like he was the type of person who could turn the page from Donald Trump. He's made the arguments about Trump individually being someone who is too dramatic or things like that. Is DeSantis's tough couple months complicating what the picture was for someone like you, whose main goal is that the party move on from Trump?
Well, it doesn't complicate it so much for me because he's not really going after the same audience that I was talking to, and we have a totally different message. But I think, yes, it's definitely complicated things for other folks that wanted to move on from Trump. You've seen the coverage. I mean, a lot of the donor class and a lot of the key political leaders around the country were saying, "Hey,
this is the guy.
This is the guy. Even if we don't think he's the greatest guy, he's the guy because he's going to beat Trump." And now they're saying, maybe he's not the guy because he's stumbling.
I guess the question I have for the primaries is it does seem at the core of a lot of the folks I'm talking to, particularly moderate folks who don't want Donald Trump to be the next nominee, that there's a question of what are they willing to accept in service of that. Even if it's people who don't agree with them on every issue, would they vote for that person in service of beating Donald Trump? Would you vote for Ron DeSantis in the service of beating Donald Trump?
I'd like to see more from Ron DeSantis over the next year and a half or so of the primaries. Or, there are certain things that I'm not comfortable with him on, and he's not probably at the top of my list. But certainly, if it was a choice between stopping Trump, it's something got to consider. And I want to see how he does. I don't think he's a great general election candidate, but he very well may have a path in the primary.
You said that you're uncomfortable with some of what DeSantis is running on right now. Is there any way you can get specific about that? What has he shifted on that has made you think maybe this isn't the general election candidate?
Well, I mean, his commentary on Ukraine was like idiotic. And I was on national TV at the time when he came out with that, and everybody hammered him on it. And he completely backed down. He sounded very supportive of Russia and anti-Ukraine, didn't want...
Walked into a Tucker Carlson trap.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really a bad move. I think he dropped quite a bit after that. I think the kind of extended, continued fight with Disney, basically, threatening to build prisons next door to them, or, it's any governor in America would love to have Disney in their state with all those jobs, and I just think those are big mistakes. And maybe at first, he got some positive traction with the base on the issue they were arguing about, but usually the Republican Party, traditional Republicans, don't usually try to put businesses out of business, and they usually defend, the right to free speech. And even if you disagree, they got a right to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah. How do you feel about the prevalence of cultural issues in the party in this moment? Because some of this feels like not only a party that has embraced Donald Trump, but also has embraced his priority of issues, which has put culture, grievance way higher than things like economic messages.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to ignore the things that are at the top of everybody's list and just focus on things for the primary. That's what we've been talking about the whole conversation. Yeah. It's about a different subset of people that they are firing up the base, and DeSantis has done a good job of that, and Trump does a good job of that by focusing on kind of grievance politics and on social issues. But those are things that are going to hurt them in the general election because it doesn't reach a majority of folks. And I think it's all about the economy and crime and education. It's not about those issues. And if you look at any poll anywhere, people are like, that's what they want to hear about.
What is then? I mean, it does seem as if the leading candidates that put Trump and DeSantis in that category are not embracing your vision of where Republicans should be, are not embracing your prioritization of issues. Yeah, they are not thinking about the party in that same way.
Yep.
Why is that not a reason for you to vote for Joe Biden, who's making that argument that that's a reason for Republicans to leave him? What keeps you in this version of the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I don't think Joe Biden's doing a good job as president. So the alternative was like, yeah, I'm not happy with the direction of my party, so I'm going to vote for a guy that I don't think is doing a very good job. That doesn't make any sense. I don't want to give up on my party, and I've been a lifelong Republican. I was involved in, Ronald Reagan's campaigns and both Bush's, and I know it's an uphill battle. I know that sometimes I feel like a lonely voice in the wilderness about, hey, what about peace through strength, and what about economic empowerment?
It does sound like throwbacks,
the things we used to talk about. But I do think, looking back, and I'm not trying to live with the dinosaurs in the past, but I think that is a path forward still, the things that we used to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And, some friends have become independents. They walked away. They've given up. Other people are like, throwing their hands up. They don't know what to do. I want to try to get my party back on track rather than saying, hey, 50 years I've been doing this, I'm just going to jump ship.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't fight back, then we leave the party to the folks that, I think that's a small percentage of people, and they don't deserve to hijack the party.
When I ask you who you think has a winning path if no one fills the anti-Trump lane, is your decision on this race firm, or is there a way that you would consider getting in here? Or also want to ask about the new open Senate seat in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, I just decided it was a very tough decision. My heart was in it because of I care about the things that you and I have been talking about,
mm-hmm.
and I really care about the party and getting the country on track. But I also, my head told me that there wasn't a path, and that multiple people trying to be in that lane was going to make it more likely that Trump rather than less likely. So, I'm not going to change my mind in the next, 30 days, which is when I think you'd have to be in the race. And so I'm going to try to hopefully find somebody to get behind. But on the Senate seat, I've just never really had a desire to be a senator. And in a year that maybe Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket, and the whole race is about not whether they like me or whether they, thought I was a good governor, but it'll be about making Mitch McConnell the Senate majority leader. And I think it'd be a rough race. And I, at the end of the day, I just didn't want to be a senator. I'm an executive. I loved being governor. I loved making decisions that impacted people's lives, and I could make a difference. And I think in Washington, no offense to those guys, but you just argue with the other 99 folks all day. Very little gets done. The worst case scenario is I'm going to get elected to the Senate, and then I got to drive to D.C. every day and argue with people and feel like I didn't accomplish anything.
But, it does seem as if for your lane of Republicans, I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about Charlie Baker, I'm thinking about people who have really grown to statewide popularity, even in some of those blue states, who have shown real electability. It does feel like Donald Trump has placed the cap on where you all can go in the Republican Party right now. Is that true?
I mean, I think Charlie Baker just made the decision to get out of politics, and he's got a great job.
He does.
NCAA, I got to hook up for Final Four tickets now, But, I decided not to run for president. But, I mean, he didn't do anything to my electability. Like I said, I left with 77% approval. I could probably, run for anything, but I just don't want to.
Mm-hmm. I got a couple more. One of the things you mentioned is that you're looking for a friend, someone who can step up in this race and be someone you can rally behind. Are you thinking of anyone specific? Is there someone who's at the top of your list?
Many of the former, I think governors are a great training ground to become president, because you're actually an executive. You have a cabinet. You're governing every day. You're making decisions, and I think that's a really good. So I served with a lot of the folks. I served as governor with Mike Pence and with Nikki Haley and with Chris Christie. And there's, Chris Sununu was talking about Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas. I like all of them. I know all of them very well. Tim Scott even though he wasn't a governor, he's a guy I like a lot. It's sort of like I got a lot of friends that I could get behind, but right now they're like, hey guys, when none of you guys are, who's gonna.
That's what I'm going to ask. Is like, is that just you waiting to see who breaks out the pack, and if whoever does that, you'll take?
Well, I mean, I think any of them are qualified and capable, and the kind of people I could vote for and get behind. But at this point, most of the people I just mentioned, half of them are not in the race yet.
Mm-hmm.
Asa is a friend. He's out there saying most of my message that he agrees with, and he's talking about similar things and moving on. So he's certainly capable. He's got a great resume. It was, a cabinet secretary, served as a prosecutor, U.S. attorney. He's a good guy. But I know all of them well, and they're people that whether we agree on every single issue or not, there's still a better direction for me than going with Donald Trump.
I mean, it does seem as if there is a window of time in which if this argument particularly from moderate or anti-Trump wing is going to be made, that we're kind of in that window. Do you think they're doing enough in that window?
But that's why I made my decision, like I guess been 6 weeks ago or something. I don't think people have much more time. I mean, some of my friends, it's like, hey, if you're going to get in, you better get in. Stop fooling around. It's like I've heard people say, well, I'm going to wait until, end of June. I'm going to wait till July or, somebody that they got to get in, start making the argument. We don't have time to waste.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to put this real directly as my last question, because I think someone can hear you and actually leave more convinced that Donald Trump is inevitable. Because if someone who comes from this lane decides not to get in the race, who has friends who are in the race, still looks at it and does not see a viable path, I guess I'm wondering, do you think Governor Hutchinson or any of these people who you mentioned could legitimately put together a winning anti-Trump coalition?
I sure hope that one of them can, but you're right. I mean, obviously, I made a decision based on the facts on the ground, and it's different than I was starting to say. Everything I said was going to happen started to happen, and then it changed. So Trump had diminished. More people were starting to speak out. People were listening to it's time to move on. And now we're in this kind of strange period right now where they started rolling back down the hill instead of like, pushing the snowball up the mountain. It starts to roll down. It went backwards rather than forward. But so, yes, today I'm very concerned about where we are. But a year from now, it could be completely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what's holding out your hope.
Yeah, I'm still not ready to give up hope. But I can't give you the facts to tell you why it's happened, but I'm going to keep fighting.
It's a real hope effort, real faith effort here.
Yeah, keep hope alive.
Governor Hogan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
After the break.
Today, I am announcing that I am a candidate for President of the United States.
We talked to Governor Hutchinson. Hey, how are you? Oh, can I see him? Does he see me yet?
No, I can only see my terrible face.
Can you hear me?
I can see you now. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, right.
And you do look sharp today. You do look sharp.
Oh no, I had a pundit panel thingy later. In addition to his Southern charm, Asa Hutchinson is known in Republican circles for being a true conservative. As governor of Arkansas, he supported a near total abortion ban. And unlike Hogan, he supported Trump in 2016. And he's got no regrets there.
But no, I don't regret supporting him because he was running against Hillary Clinton, who was the first lady of Arkansas for a few years. But she was wanting to go a leftist direction in our country. And so, no, that was a binary, easy choice for me. And I think it paid off.
He supported Trump again when he ran in 2020.
I had seen some of the flaws in leadership of the president, but balance it out with where Biden was wanting to take the country. It was an easy choice there. Absolutely, I supported Trump for re-election, but again...
But after Trump lost, Hutchinson denounced him. And about 1 month after Hogan announced that he wouldn't run for president in 2024, Hutchinson announced that he would. What was it about the 2020 post-election period that was the red line for you?
Well, it was January 6th. It was President Trump assembling Americans there to protest the election results. That troubled me, and I said, I supported him twice. Let's not do this again. Let's make sure, whether it's me or somebody else, that we have an alternative and a new direction for our party.
This message makes Hutchinson the only Republican running an explicitly anti-Trump campaign. In the week since his announcement, he's barely been able to break 1% in the polls. But Hutchinson sees a lane for himself, different than Hogan, as a serious conservative ready to move on.
But I will say that the Republican base, particularly those that contribute significantly to campaigns, they want alternatives to Donald Trump.
What makes you so confident about that?
Well, because I talk to them every day. And they would like to see somebody that can win against Donald Trump. Now, some of them are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see who arises and surfaces as the strongest opposition. But you've got a majority of Republicans that say, let's move on and look for alternatives.
Interesting. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who was also thinking about running and decided not to, he said in an op-ed for The Times that, quote, "The stakes are too high for me to risk being part of another multi-car pileup that can potentially help Donald Trump recapture the nomination." Is there any fears that you have about recreating the things that made Trump possible in 2016?
Well, actually, I've talked with Governor Hogan a number of times. He's a good friend. His voice is very important, will continue to be that. You know, on this point, I've said that we actually need to have multiple candidates in the race.
Why is that?
Because there's strength. Why is that? It's because can you imagine a race right now only between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis? It's not going the right direction now. So you need to have a number of horses in the race to see which one's going to get to the pole position and be able to hold it. And we're not even to the first corner yet on that race, the first turn. And so you need multiple voices in there because there's strength in that message. But I think that's how you explain, people do want the alternative, but they want a little time to figure out who that top alternative is going to be to Donald Trump. Whenever you look at the challenge that we face in our economy, and that should be the number one focus for 2024. I've been a governor that solved problems, that's balanced budget for 8 years, that's controlled spending, that's reduced the size of our state employment. And so that record fits with the challenges that we face.
You mentioned the economy as the issue you think should be front and center for 24, but that's certainly not what the Republican Party has spent the most time talking about. How do you balance that with the Republican Party that's increasingly become consumed by a cultural grievance?
Well, it's a natural concern about the culture. Everyone is impacted by the environment in which we live, and they want to shape it in a way that reflects their values. So that's an important fight. But whenever you look at the role of government, my focus, if you look at my announcement speech, is the economy. And sure, I am also very cognizant. That's why I've signed a bill that prohibits biological males from competing in women's sports. These issues are important as well. But whenever you're looking at providing an income for a family that needs to, put food on the table, that needs to buy gas for the car, that wants a good quality of life, this is always what is important in terms of elections.
But at the same time, I've seen things where you have incurred the ire of some Republicans for not going far enough on those cultural issues. Trump called you a rhino for vetoing a bill that came through the legislature about banning gender-affirming care for people under 18. What went into those decisions to distance yourself from some of the ways the Republican Party was shifting on those issues?
Well, I'm not trying to shift. I'm just trying to state my position and try to think it through under my constitutional responsibilities. But in that case, what is the role of the state? When should we use the power of the state to interfere with parental decisions? And that's generally a conservative position to protect parental decision-making when it comes to healthcare, whether it's a vaccine or whether it's other healthcare and sensitive issues. Obviously, I don't believe that a minor and a parent should consent to reassignment sex surgery. I would sign a bill that prohibited that. That goes too far. But when you're looking at normal, routine medical treatment, then the state should step back and allow parents to make decisions unless there's an extraordinary, compelling interest. We're still studying much of that, but that's the basis in which I made the decision. It was an extreme bill, and I struck it down, and my veto was overridden.
And as you mentioned, that does sound like the more consistent, traditional, conservative approach as you articulated it. But at the same time, we were just at CPAC where that issue came up over and over and over again. How do you contend with a Republican Party that has gone further than even you may have been comfortable with on those issues?
This is important to our communities, to our families. And it's not just in the transgender issue, but I met with college students at a major university, and they were concerned about their conservative views being suppressed on campus. There's a concern about the cancel culture. It's a concern about our businesses being pushed left in terms of a social agenda. I agree with those concerns, and that's what campaigns are about. That's what debates are about. You articulate what you believe in and defend it, and that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like some of the issues that some other Republican candidates or prospective candidates in 24 have taken up. Ron DeSantis has really centered his political rise on taking on kind of woke corporate culture. Is that version of anti-Trump message good enough for someone like you? Because he does represent a turn on the page from Donald Trump, but is certainly doing so on terms that are not centered around, say, the economy.
Well, there's differences. I mean, he's different from Donald Trump, but he's also similar in many ways. And I have disagreements with him. There's a lot of things that we agree upon. But, whenever you look at what I just said about the power of government, Governor DeSantis has decided to use the power of government to punish a business in which he disagreed with what that business said. The position that they took, that's called free speech. That's called a conservative approach to government.
I mean, I hear you, but at the same time, the person who seems to have broken through, a.k.a. DeSantis, has led through grievance and kind of mimicking that Donald Trump prioritization of issues. How do you leapfrog that wing and that kind of grievance-driven group of the party if their hold seems to be this large?
Well, under your arguments, we ought to just all go home and say the country is lost and the party is lost. Well, I'm not going to do that. It's about engaging the debate, going to those tough audiences. I've been there. I've been there with election deniers. I make the message. They're not running me out of the room. They're saying, okay, we might not agree on that, but we agree on a whole bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what campaigns are about, is building those coalitions. And I believe it can work.
Mm-hmm. I have a moment that I keep thinking about. We were at the RNC in Dana Point, California, and Henry Barber, the longtime committee man out from Mississippi, was telling me that, I think he said directly that any plan that starts with anti-Trump is a losing one in this Republican Party. That there was no universe to being able to build a party going forward that did not include bringing Donald Trump and his supporters along. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I could see that argument, and that's an approach that many candidates right now for president are taking, that let's just all get along and let's make sure we don't offend Donald Trump or take a position that might offend, his ardent supporters. But, campaigns are about providing clarity in the decisions, clarity in the choices that are made. And whenever he is a former president of the United States, he's almost like an incumbent. The burden of proof is on you. And if you don't contrast yourself with who you're running against, you don't have a chance. And so I think what I would agree with Henry on is that we've got to bring along all of those ardent Trump supporters, not alienate them, but bring them along and say, this direction here can accomplish the conservative change that you want in America. We can just do it in a common sense, conservative approach without all the drama. And that's what brings along people, is not the division, but saying we're agreed on 80% of the issues, so let's fight the same battle together.
When I talk to Democrats, they will ask, why aren't more Republicans making that argument? And it does seem like you are occupying a kind of unique role. You want to launch a campaign that speaks directly to those folks and makes that case to them. I guess I'm asking, where should we look for the evidence that is working, that you're breaking through, making those arguments to those ardent Trump supporters?
Well, it's first of all, the polling numbers. We've gone from negligible up. And so even though we're still a long ways from Donald Trump, our numbers are moving in the right direction, in contrast to Ron DeSantis. Ours is going the right direction, his is going the wrong direction. And so there's some evidence there, but also join me, come with me to Iowa, come with me to South Carolina, and you can see the response of people that I speak to and work with.
Mm-hmm. Is there any version of Donald Trump that you can imagine yourself supporting? If he was the nominee, would you support him?
Well, I expect to support the nominee of the party. That's likely to be a condition of participating in the debates. I don't expect that nominee will be Donald Trump. So that's where I am. Let's see where it goes.
I guess I want to ask only just one more, because it does feel core to the message you're running as president now that Donald Trump has taken the party and the country down a dark path. I guess if I am to believe you on that, how can it also not be clear whether you would or wouldn't vote for him in 2024?
Well, it's important to participate on the debate stage in Milwaukee in August. And I understand, although we haven't seen it yet, that there will be conditions that the participants support the nominee of the party. I don't believe that nominee is going to be Donald Trump. I expect that the candidates will probably sign that commitment to support the nominee of the party. And the basis is that they believe it will be them, that it will not be Donald Trump. I don't prefer party loyalty oaths. I don't like speculating down the road as to how this develops. We don't know what's going to happen. And so let's wait and see, but that's where I am right now.
Mm-hmm. Is there any universe where Donald Trump could lose your vote in 2024? If he's the nominee?
Well, sure. But I mean, we've anything is, there's some things that could happen in life that would cause me to nix a vote for any particular person. So
I guess I'm asking because a lot has happened to him already, right? Like, he has been indicted, he has been impeached, he has gone through scandal, he's gone backwards on conservative promises. He's taken your party down a dark path, and we're still at this point. I'm saying, what is the thing looking forward that might make you feel that Donald Trump's version of the Republican Party may not include a Governor Hutchinson? Is there a point where that could be true?
Well, of course. I mean, you can, in your mind, think of a number of scenarios that you could not support somebody, but we're not there. Mm-hmm. And let's don't speculate on the future. You could say the absolute same thing about me. Mm-hmm. There's things that could happen that positions I take or other things that's going to lose the support of other potential nominees. And so things change, but I fully expect the nominee to be somebody that I can support, and I expect it to be somebody different than Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Governor. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. Good to be with you.
So the numbers are there to block a Trump nomination. The anti-Trump coalition is big enough. And this year, they're acting with the lessons of 2016 in mind. But I keep thinking about something Nate Cohn said to me last week, that the reasons Republicans oppose Donald Trump are varied, but the opportunities to bring them together are limited. So far, DeSantis' campaign against woke has been the only issue that's gained traction in both camps. And of course, that's exactly the thing that folks like Hutchinson and Hogan would prefer to minimize. This is the paradox of the moment. Because of the nature of a primary, the path to a winning anti-Trump coalition would seem to require an embrace of the very grievances Trump brought to the fore. Next week, what happens to the millions of voters who are ready to turn the page on Trumpism, but have nowhere to go? The Run-Up is reported by me, Astead Herndon, and produced by Elisa Gutierrez, Caitlin O'Keefe, and Anna Foley. It's edited by Franny Kartoff and Lisa Tobin, with original music by Dan Powell, Marian Lozano, and Alicia Ba'itu. It was mixed by Corey Schreppel and fact-checked by Caitlin Love. Special thanks to Paula Schumann, Sam Dolnick, Larissa Anderson, David Halfinger, Mahima Chablani, Desiree Ibaqua, Renan Borelli, Jeffrey Miranda, Sophia Landman, and Maddie Masiello. If you like the show and want to get updates on latest episodes, follow our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, y'all.